Kittitas County Historical Museum. I also have staff on the call. So I'd like to introduce my assistant, Jordan Bartholomew.
Thank you. Debbie Bogart.
Downtown Association.
We couldn't quite hear you when you first started talking. So do you want to try that one more time? Erin, do you want to jump in and do an introduction?
Yeah. So that is Debbie Bogart. She is the executive director of the Cle Elum Downtown Association. I am Taryn Lund. I am her assistant slash contractor slash, I just work with Debbie.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Ryder.
I'm Mariana Shane with Wheelline Cider. Ryder's actually my son. I don't know, probably from Zoom meetings at school.
So, okay, thanks for joining us. Gail Pickin.
I'm Gail Pickin with Day Trips in Washington and the Northwest Travel Channel.
Thank you. Molly Edson.
With the 420 building, Ellensburg Community Radio, and the 420 Loft Gallery.
Thank you. Ruth.
Ruth Townsend, Hotel Windrow and Basalt, and I'm standing in for Steve because we're opening the restaurant on Wednesday evening and he's in meetings.
Patrick.
Hi, Patrick Disney from Central Washington University Theater Arts, where I'm the associate chair.
Thank you. Carissa Whitham, is that how you say that?
Yeah, it's Carissa Whithian. You were pretty close.
Okay.
I'm with Pretty Fair Beer. We just opened in downtown Ellensburg in the 420 building.
Welcome. Lori.
Hi, Lori Gigstead with the City of Ellensburg.
Thank you. I have Michelle Worrell.
Hi there, Michelle Worrell, Kittitas Valley Healthcare.
Welcome. Carly Jensen.
Hello, Carly Jensen with Heritage Bank.
Hi, Carly. Leslie.
Hi, Leslie Thurston with the Washington State Horse Park.
Okay. And I am showing a caller of some type trying to connect audio, and I'm wondering if that is our next panelist. So we'll give him some time. And I forgot to press the record button, so I'm just going to introduce why we are here today. This is the Kittitas County Chamber of Commerce information session, and we are joining Director of Tourism and Events for the Kittitas County Chamber of Commerce, Madison Ford, with discussion of tourism businesses in this time of COVID-19 with Dr. Larson. And we are waiting for Dr. Larson to join us. So Madison, if you can, I'd like you to just kind of start off with some of the information you're going to be providing, and hopefully we can get him on.
Okay, great. Yeah. I mean, obviously tourism is our county's biggest industry and brings a lot of economic development to Kittitas County. And of course, has also been the biggest industry hit by this pandemic. So just wanted to kind of get everybody together, whether you are, on my tourism committee, super involved, we talk on a weekly basis, or if you just want to hear about the industry here in Kittitas County, and where we're moving. And we're going to be meeting with Dr. Larson too, just because there are some questions that he's going to be able to answer better just with his background. He can help answer those super niche and super industry specific questions as well. And if not, at least point us in the right direction. So we'll be talking about messaging as a brand if you are a tourism related business. And even if you're a business that's not necessarily tourism related, but a lot of your audience is outside of 50 miles or more outside of Kittitas County. We will talk about event planning and what that looks like. If you've been a part of our event discussion, we have been meeting on a weekly basis to come up with some basic guidelines for events to go off of until we have more direction from the governor's office. And so we'll be discussing that. and talking about planning for out-of-town visitors, getting some guidance from Dr. Larson on how we can help prepare, especially being in phase 2. And I have a few questions that I've gotten since the announcement of this. And so I'll be kind of bouncing those off Dr. Larson, and hopefully at the end, this will probably take 45 minutes, maybe an hour if it's super long, but we'll be able to open it up to you guys. So if you have any questions during the whole conversation, please feel free to leave those in the chat. And then I'll just go through them all at the end. That seems to be kind of the easiest way to do it.
I think we're still waiting for Dr. Larson to come on.
Okay, I can discuss a couple beginning things until he jumps on.
Sure, please do.
Okay. Yeah. So I was just talking to a stakeholder in a meeting before this one that does have a lot of their audience is from out of town, about messaging and kind of pivoting their advertisement. Should you be advertising right now? If you're trying to get people from outside of the county into the county, and what does that look like? What are your options? So a big thing in the industry right now, as you may see in our destination marketing campaigns, which I didn't really introduce that, but the chamber serves as the destination marketing organization for the county. So we have 3 different campaigns for the city of Ellensburg, the city of Cle Elum, and for the county. So a big part of that is drawing tourists to the area and then helping give them a more seamless experience once they're here. But of course, because we're advised not to travel except for necessity and for business right now, that looks a little bit different. And so it's really just bolstering and kind of putting the pressure on businesses and nonprofits to get creative in how they're messaging. A big thing right now in the industry is dreaming. So like dreaming about experiencing X, Y, and Z, whatever it is that you're not able to open right now, or planning for a future experience. So if I'm an art gallery and I'm not able to unfortunately open up right now, maybe my marketing and messaging switches to be more of that inspirational element, which obviously plays into description, content. This is a great time to be updating your website with any information that folks can find virtually until they're able to experience you in person again. We do know that even though we're not encouraging travel due to state mandates too much right now, people are coming anyway. We haven't seen tourism drop as dramatically as it has globally in Kittitas County, especially Memorial Day weekend, this last weekend, just because we are kind of Washington State's playground. So I'm hoping that as we move through phase 2 and into the following phases, that'll just be punctuated more and more.
Sorry for the interruption, Madison.
Go ahead.
But Dr. Larson is our phone call
Great.
participant. So he is here, it looks like. So just want to welcome Dr. Larson into the conversation.
Yeah, thanks. I was listening to the governor talking about farm workers and testing in long-term care. So I'll be listening. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm gonna show a little event guidebook we've been working on. And then we have a few questions for you, and hopefully people will leave some below as well that I can refer to as well. Sherry or Amy, I can share that event guideline book if you want to give me permission by just clicking share screen on the bottom and then allowing any person to share their screen.
Easier said than done. Just a second.
Okay, no worries.
Optimize. It doesn't give me that option.
Okay, so I can verbally say it then. That's totally fine.
Well, let's see. It says select a window or application that you want to share, but it doesn't say that I can allow somebody to share.
You might be able to go to participants, click on me, and then make me the host.
Okay.
Oh, I'm the host now. Yay. Okay, that works. Thank you.
Okay.
Woohoo. Okay, so can you guys see my screen here? Yes, okay, perfect. So to find our event guidelines, which we just formalized and finalized today with our subcommittee, we've worked with Dr. Larson and his team to put together a comprehensive guidebook for small to large scale gatherings and events throughout the county. This is at a, what do you say, Amy, at a 5,000 foot level. It is super broad and it is not very industry specific, as these are the basic guidelines that we've worked with several different organizations, both on a local level and on a global level, to come up with. And one of those organizations being WFEA, Washington Festivals and Events Association, who is part of that focus group, that group of stakeholders that's working with Governor Inslee to put together some more specific guidelines for our state. So this is as close as we can get until we have that formalized guideline book. And you can find it on a couple places on our website, KittitasCountyChamber.com. You can go to COVID-19 resources and then drop down to business support, or you can go to our events and meetings and then click on host an event, and both should have this button right here. Play hard, play smart, play safe, playbook. A guide to reopening events. And it opens up to this PDF, which we've worked with multiple partners. Thank you to the city of Ellensburg, all of the cities, city of Cle Elum, Roslyn, Kittitas, South Cle Elum, as well as the downtown associations and everyone who was involved on the group call, even just giving us feedback on this, as it has been quite comprehensive. We have on this document basically a message from leadership, kind of introducing it, a disclaimer that this guidebook will be changing. And as you notice, there is a date here saying this is version 1 that just got finalized today. So this will continue to change as we find more information, and if state guidelines are put out that are clear, then this might completely go away as we adapt those. So stay tuned on that. We will continue to update stakeholders and event coordinators throughout the county on how that progresses. A table of contents, of course. We feature some considerations for canceling or postponing a mass gathering, and some things to keep in mind and weigh the pros and cons of. This is a great starting piece for if you have a board or your staff and you don't know where to start with deciding on your event. It can bring up some really important talking points that you might not have even considered before. We have some recommendations to protect event volunteers, staff, vendors, and attendees, which includes, the use of PPP, limiting cash handling. Again, these are super vague guidelines, just enough to give you some ideas to inspire your own safety plan for your event. Communicating with your team. So this just talks about some best practices to talk with your team and your volunteers and your vendors, anybody who is going to be in person at your event, how to be proactive in minimizing any conflicts that could come up. We discuss PPE, of course, and who should wear what. This is a really popular question, especially with events right now. And again, we did get the stamp of approval from Public Health and Dr. Larson on this. So it is the most accurate that we could come up with. We have a how to make your own mask. If you need information and you haven't seen 200 tutorials on Facebook and YouTube, it's a good piece to be able to hand out to your staff or to your event coordinator, just in case they need it. How to create your own mask out of a shirt. patron education. So just how are you putting out and communicating what you're doing and your safety plan? Is this in signage? Is this through your social media? Of course, this needs to be implemented in your marketing strategy from the beginning. And so this just kind of touches on that a bit. We talk about sick workers and volunteers in case of that. What are the legal ramifications? What are the best practices? What are the timelines kind of looking like? We also talk about sanitizing the venue before the event. And again, this could be an event, meaning a happy hour that you're having or a workshop with 5 people. And then it could be a major scaled event, which, you know, we'd hope that you'd work with a sanitization crew to come in and put together a plan for the best practices in that case as well. And obviously that'll be a little bit down the road. Again, cleaning and disinfecting during the event on different surfaces. Again, this was through public health. They've been a great partner in developing this with us. So we were able to get some of the best practices, ideas on, you know, soft surfaces, curtains, how do you disinfect that? And so it goes into a little bit of detail there. As far as coming in and out of the event, we have a little bit of information on managing that, managing the quantity of people, what sort of PPE hand washing stations play into that, what does the supply and demand factor have to do with that. It's all kind of mentioned here on this page. And we also talk about, basic food and beverage, restrooms, seated venues. It gets pretty diverse. Like if you're a show with an intermission, what does this look like? Ordering, of course, we talk about single-use material, POS systems, what are some of the best practices there? And this is really good for a lot of the general events that are serving food or working with vendors. And something that I wanted to include here also from the Washington Festival and Events Association is their vendor safety plan example. If you're hosting an event and you have people coming in, you're obviously going to have some vendors, and some people technically can have all vendors submit their own safety plan and have that on basically in a binder ready to go. But this is a great way if you are continuing to move forward in planning an event to send to all of your vendors and have them fill it out. That way it's all cohesive, print it off, put it in a binder, and just have it in the background just in case you needed to refer to it later. We talk about production issues, booking an event, physical distancing with performers. We talk about, of course, ground transportation and how to clean a vehicle for an event in that situation. The legal side of hosting events during COVID-19 and some things to consider there. And then a ton of sources that we use to compile and come up with this accumulative guidebook. So that way, I know it is super vague, but you'll be able to refer to more specific details at these resources and consult your industry and your niche for certain best practices within that. So I will stop sharing here, but if any of you are interested in continuing to build this with us as things change, or have any questions or see something that could be added, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'll drop my email in the chat so that you guys have it. And yeah, Dr. Larson, I don't know if you're still on the line, but I'd love to invite you to talk about just planning for out-of-town visitors. Now that we're in phase 2, we know that technically they aren't advised to be traveling over here, but they are. And what should people be aware of and be including in their safety plans?
Yeah, I'm still on the line. You know, it's always hard to, when people, and you're not asking this question directly, but when people say, how can we do this safer? And I have to say, or is this safe? And I have to say, yes, that's safe to do that, but it's not allowed. So we have to be careful with that. I'm going to give you an example of why you should be prepared for doing these things. Earlier this week, I had set up a WebEx with all of the church leaders in the county for today, because I was told over the weekend by one of the church leaders that nobody was really busy doing their safety plans because they didn't assume that they were going to be able to have in-church services until July. So they were all being kind of lackadaisical about it. But we set the appointment up today so we could talk about getting their safety plans together. Then, of course, yesterday, the governor put out guidance on having inpatient or in church services on Saturday. So now these folks are struggling with trying to figure out how they can do those things safely. So even though we're marching through the phases at a minimum of 3 weeks per phase, it doesn't mean that certain things aren't going to change in between those phases. And that's what happened with the church services. So, that said, that we know people are coming over, you have to be tricky with inviting people to come over because, and I was just on a phone call with the governor's office an hour ago talking about travel, and we don't know what's going to happen with the governor's stay home, stay healthy order, which has to have something done with it on the 31st, which is this weekend. But if we're encouraging people to come over, we have to make sure that we're not telling them to break the law to come over, because they're really supposed to be staying home. So that's a dance that you'll have to dance, knowing that people are going to come over, but you shouldn't be telling them to come over. So that's going to change over time as we get into phase 3 and phase 4. So non-essential travel is going to change. We know that camping is now allowed in phase 2. Again, we're supposed to be camping and staying locally, but that doesn't always happen. So especially, and this affects more upper Kittitas County than it does lower Kittitas County, but you all get a lot more people coming over from Seattle than we get coming up from Yakima or over from Grant County. So you should be prepared for people coming over. You should be looking at your safety plans and how you're going to handle people coming in and out of your businesses and events. You should be, ready to encourage people to be wearing, to be masking. Again, that directive is just that. It's an ask. It's a strong ask, but it's an ask, and making sure that we are not irritating people that refuse not to wear a mask, because people have a right to refuse not to wear a mask. But if we can get more people wearing masks, we're just going to be able to move through our phases a little bit quicker as we have less disease. So hand washing facilities are definitely needed in all venues. And then just as a general thing is we cannot be less strict than the governor, but we can be more strict than the governor. So, and it does not mean that we can't try to work out some kind of a variance, some kind of a way to have things happen. So I'm always willing to have one-on-one conversations with people. I actually had an hour-long conversation with the rodeo board yesterday in regards to how we might be able to do a rodeo event and how that would really work, and would we be in what could we do if we were still in phase 3, or if we were in phase 4, what would that require as far as social distancing and masking? So it's always better to do things on the front end than to be surprised like the church leaders were, and now they're struggling. And I think a lot of the churches are just not going to have services right away this weekend because they don't feel like they're ready to do that safely. But I can be reached through email, and then I'm happy to set up appointments or talk to people about their specific events and how those things might be able to be worked. Phase 3 is a minimum of 3 weeks from when we got our phase 2 variants. So phase 3 at a minimum would be the 17th of June, and phase 4 at the very earliest would be July 8th. Most of us feel like it's unlikely to be in phase 4 this summer anytime, and that was the discussion I had with the rodeo board yesterday.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really insightful. Helps people kind of get an idea of the timeline on that. Somebody had asked, what % decline should our events expect? And of course, that is a super multifaceted question. Based on some survey data, 63% of people living in Pierce and King County said that they would still be interested in attending an event this summer. But around the same amount, 61% told us that they would not feel comfortable with events over 100 people. So I'm not surprised to hear at all that we shouldn't expect to be in phase 4 by the end of the summer. Dr. Larson, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think like going back to the churches, they know that their parishioners want to come back to church. The people that would be choosing not to come over to an event would be choosing to not come over because of their perception of risk, not necessarily not necessarily because they feel like they're breaking the law, but their perception that it's at risk to their health. So if you market your event of here's what we're doing to promote safety, you're going to mitigate some of that. You're definitely going to have a decreased number, but I think if you look at the number of people that are coming, it may actually turn out to be that you have more people coming to events because Sea King, that area on the west side is going to be in phase 1 realistically probably through the summer.
Wow.
So anybody wanting to escape Seattle-King County to do an event, they would want to do it safely, but they're mostly just wanting to get out of there. And so I wouldn't be surprised if you found that you had higher numbers, especially if you market, we are looking out for your safety, and here's how we're doing that.
But again, Dr. Larson, this is Amy. It's kind of that catch-22 where we want to make sure that we are doing it safely. So if you are a group that is planning an event that's later in the summer, you really need to take that consideration of how you're moving forward, because Dr. Larson, like he said earlier, can tell you the things that you're doing is safe, but it's not necessarily allowed depending on the date of your event, correct?
That's absolutely correct. I had a Christian school principal ask me about safety of a graduation event just due to the fact that the governor said churches could have indoor and outdoor church. And so I had to say, well, what you're doing is safe, but it's not really allowed. So I think being really careful of looking at what's allowed in the phase. So phase 3 are gatherings of 50 people or less. That's where it is today. Again, those phases can change, but phase 3, you're looking at small events. So could you have a small event limiting those to 50 and have an event have an hour or two time to clean the venue, and then have another event of 50 people, throughout the day? I mean, those things are things, I think you have to look at things creatively and but then look at what the phases are going to allow. And if we get into phase, I mean, I think we will be in phase 3 for the majority of the summer. So looking at small events, I think is an appropriate thing. Things like the rodeo, that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
Not impossible, but tough. They're talking about videotaping it. They had some discussion of, can we do it without having anybody in the stands? I mean, there's a lot of things going on. So people are trying to be creative along the lines of making sure that we're doing things safely and within the law.
Great. Another specific question for kind of tourism related businesses, Doctor. If a museum or an art gallery or something similar with artifacts or really sensitive material that cannot be necessarily wiped down and can't handle the sanitization chemicals in the kind of air gun style machinery, what would you recommend to sanitize these items, even if they are no touch items? It seems that people still putting a sign up that says don't touch just makes them want to do it more. So do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, I know that a lot of people are looking at ultrasonic guidance or ultrasonic cleaners. One thing that was brought up, and I apologize for not, that this went through my email string and I didn't get back to it, was the ultraviolet light things. They don't. You have to hold that for about 20 minutes over an object to really get it to have an effect, and most of us aren't going to be able to do that. But other things are time definitely works for you. So I'm going to go back to my discussion with the churches. One church, it was Foursquare Church, said, well, we have cloth seats. That's a problem. They're hard to disinfect, but they only have a service once a week. So that time factor actually takes care of a big part of it for them. So.
Great. Okay. And somebody asked, I'm interested in hosting political campaign fundraisers in Kittitas County. Would the business location or private citizen need to submit a request for that type of event or function? I dropped my email in the chat, so whoever asked that question, why don't you just email me and then we can talk a little bit more about your needs. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that the size of those events would still play a role in that, but I don't know any. Otherwise, I don't have any ideas about that.
Okay.
But for clarification, Dr. Larson, if a private business chose to hold those meetings, that private business would have to make sure that they have a safety plan in place, because if for some reason there was a transmission, when it comes to the tracing, that would be one of the questions that would be helpful in an understanding and then potentially moving forward with the contact tracing, correct?
It would definitely be helpful to have, all businesses need to have a safety plan. They don't have to be reviewed by us. Part of that is just so those businesses are thinking about what's safe and how they would keep their employees and customers safe. And the other one part of that is, unfortunately, we live in a very litigious environment. And if somebody does not have a safety plan, and it's always hard to tell where somebody got exposed and infected to something. But if a business had a safety plan, they would have a lot more ground to stand on to say, I don't think that this person really got infected in our business because of X, Y, and Z, than it would be if they didn't have a safety plan. The safety plans a lot of times are not just used for case and contact investigation, but it's used for, like with Twin City Foods, they had a great safety plan, and they voluntarily chose to close down for a variety of reasons, but by having a safety plan, we were able to say, okay, well, the only thing that's really missing on your safety plan is you should be mandating masking instead of just giving it voluntary, and I think that's going to fix them. So I think it's just helpful to have a safety plan for lots of reasons.
I think the second part to that answer, Madison, if I might be able to just put my opinion in it, is it's also about back to tourism related businesses. It's how you're promoting or marketing your business. And so I think for anybody that's choosing to do a small event, if we get to phase 3, just remember how you're marketing and getting those people there, because it's about that a little bit too. So
it is. Let me go back to the case and contact thing that you brought up. So one of the things that was really difficult for people was when the governor said all restaurants need to keep a list of people that showed up every day and keep that for 30 days. And people really didn't like that. So they took that off of the guidance. And interestingly, the church guidance kind of did the same thing, said you can keep those lists if you want to keep those lists. Those are helpful for us, but they're not mandatory for us from public health. We would talk to whatever business had an outbreak and say, okay, well, do you have any idea who might have been here at this particular time? And sometimes people know and sometimes people don't know. But I would not, if keeping a list was, you felt like if keeping a list was going to keep people away from your event, then I would, unless the governor tells us we have to keep a list, I would say we in public health are going to be able to figure that out anyway.
So this is Debbie Bogart up in Cle Elum. I have a question about events. I was not able to go to the Ellensburg Public Market, so I don't know how it was run. I don't know how many people were there. But when we look at 4th of July Pioneer Day in the Upper County, and we have a city who really wants us to see some small events going on during that time, so we're in the middle of trying to plan how that might work. What happens if you have a line of trucks for kids to see? Can you only have 50 people walking through that at a time, even if you have it well managed? Or, I mean, is that what you're, around that group, we have other things, an Eagles group that wants to do a breakfast. We've got another group that wants to do maybe some vintage vendors and have a walkthrough. How do you manage something like that? What would be your suggestions? Because it becomes multiple little events in Upper County, which draws people.
Yeah, so the idea of having the more people you have together, the more likely you're going to spread disease. That's the reason that phase 3 has groups less than 50. So if you were going to do something like that, they would have to be separated in distance, and they would have to be separated. You couldn't market it as we're having this big event with multiple things. You would really have to be saying, okay, well, we are going to have this event on the very eastern edge of Cle Elum and market that, and then we're going to have this other event up by Safeway at the other end of Cle Elum. It'd be really hard to justify saying, I'm going to have an event at the hardware store and right across the street at the coffee store, I'm going to have another event each with 50.
Right.
So you'd have to really think about that of how are we really keeping within the spirit of the law and not just saying, okay, well, here's a loophole in the law, because the idea really is to keep people healthy. So some of those people that were going to one event over at the horse park are not necessarily going to go to the other event at the other end of town. So you could certainly look at it that way. We'd have to sit down and really think about that one. But you're really wanting to keep those people, those events separate.
Right. I understand that. I'm playing both ends of the want here in the community. So thank you.
Dr. Larson, I think this should be the last question here, unless anybody else wants to drop some in the chat box. But can you help tell us how the phases treat performers / presenters specifically? They asked, are the same restrictions placed on performers in this plan, in the guidebook? Yes. Same expectations of social distancing. They say that they do not see any specifics on the .gov website.
Can you give me an example?
I think that they're asking, is it any different for performers and presenters as far as social distancing? So like if they arrive as a band, are they needing to stay 6 feet away from each other on the stage? Are they going to, do they need to be masked? Does everything kind of carry over to performers and presenters, or are the rules kind of different there?
I think if you ask me today, the rules are the same, but the rules can be changed. I'll just give you the rules that came out from the governor in regards to church services. Say that everyone in the church has to be masked, including the pastor, all the congregation, and those type of things, and they have to try to maintain 6 foot social distancing. 6 foot social distancing can sometimes be, the reason we put a mask on, at least in Kittitas County, is if we can't maintain that 6 foot social distancing, then we put a mask on. The governor said for churches, they had to wear a mask. So those things would change. And they probably will change over the summer. But if you had a band playing and that band could socially distance, that would be better. You're going to have some issues with, if you had a band with a singer, you'd have to really make sure that there was enough distance from, obviously that person is not necessarily going to want to wear a mask. Nor would they have to wear a mask if they could keep more than 6 feet away. And that would be, my recommendation would be keep that person way back from the crowds and those type of things. So I think that would be a one-off thing. And I have not seen any specific guidance in regards to performers and those type of things. But I think what's happening on a statewide level is like what happened when we went into phase 2 initially. That guidance, they told the counties they could go into phase 2, but there was no guidance at that time. So I think they're behind the 8 ball in a lot of these things. So what I would ask is I would send an email to the governor's website and say, here's our question, and I will send that for you as well. But my guess is that if nobody asks, it's probably not on somebody's screen that they're looking at.
Mm-hmm. And just a clarification point there, are you saying that they would have to be asked, or that if you're having like a smaller concert that you as the event coordinator have to ask the performers and the attendees to wear a mask?
Right now, in Kittitas County, I, as the health officer, am directing people to wear a mask. That's not you have to wear a mask. That's if you can't maintain 6 foot social distancing, you have to wear a mask. So I don't think you as a event coordinator need to necessarily ask anyone, but you need to think about people's risks that would be coming to that event, and do what you can to mitigate those risks. I'll give you an example that the rodeo board was thinking. I guess they've had events where they've had dance, or for their concerts that occur, which I've not been to one of the concerts, at the rodeo arena, but they're talking about if they can do that, they're going to not use just a small portion of the arena for the people coming to listen to the concert. They're going to spread them out throughout the whole arena. So I just think you have to be thoughtful in regards to how you're going to protect your customers that are coming to your events. And but I don't predict that there will be mandatory masking from the governor, especially in an outdoor situation. I mean, the church thing is high risk. It's an indoor situation, and they jumped the queue, because for the rest of us, it's 5 people outside of our family we can get together. And now, and that under 50 is really a phase 3 thing. So that's why the mandatory masking went in place. Outdoor events are safer, and I just don't see that will come without things. So I think you just need to look at, how do we keep people apart? If you've got somebody that's singing, I mean, I've been to lots of concerts where I've been squished up against the stage. That would not be what I would be doing this summer.
Yeah, okay. And definitely reflecting that in the plan as well, I'm sure. Last kind of question, or at least a couple of thoughts I'd love for you to touch on for those on the call. Can you discuss the state's approach to Airbnbs and hotels opening and accepting guests that are not essential workers? And, you know, I'm sure that they're not necessarily asking that, and it's not really in their right to, but can you just kind of talk a little bit about that and the state's direction?
Yeah, that's a hot topic currently, and I'm only going to touch a little bit on that because Laura Oshatis is spending some time getting a feel for Upper County, for what her constituents in Upper County really want in that regard. So I can just tell you what we currently have in Washington State is a stay home, stay healthy order, which means we're not supposed to be going anywhere. So all those people that are supposed to be traveling, that are traveling to Upper County, are not supposed to be really doing that. So, and I was just on a phone call with the governor's office about this specifically, and they only waded into that from saying hotel workers are essential. So that's their only document in regards to that, is that they said, well, we need people in the hotel industry to take care of housing for somebody who's, let's say, a nurse who's volunteering to go work in Yakima and needs someplace to stay while he or she's working at the hospital. So that's the reason that they said hotel workers are essential, but they didn't really weigh into the whole Airbnb rentals, those type of things. So I know Laura's working on that closely. I had a call with her earlier today in regards to that, and she's really trying to get a feel, both looking at safety as well as economics and tourism. And so I would reach out to her with your feelings about that, one way or the other.
Right.
I think there's really strong feelings on both sides in Upper Kittitas County in regards to that. Mm-hmm. It's just one of those things that I have to say, well, we're not supposed to be doing it. We're not supposed to be traveling. And so people are trying to figure that out. And it's probably the hot topic of the day now that we're past the whole, are we going to get our variance request? So I would ask all of you to reach out to Laura, either by email or sending her a text or giving her a call and say, here's how I feel about short-term rentals. And because she's really struggling with trying to figure out what the pulse is in Upper Kittitas County. And I think hearing from a variety of people, from a variety of industries, I think is really going to be helpful for her.
Dr. Larson?
Yeah.
Don Solberg here. If would an event be inherently less risky if the invitees and almost all of the attendees lived in Kittitas County? In other words, you restricted it to Kittitas County population.
Well, our incidence of disease, our prevalence of disease appears to be pretty low. I mean, before we had our Twin Cities outbreak, we only had 16 total cases in Kittitas County. So if you look at the fact that there's probably less people affected in Kittitas County, that if you only had people coming from Kittitas County, that would be a less risky event than having people come from Yakima or Seattle where there's more disease. That was the whole idea. That was the whole idea behind me telling Central that they couldn't bring their college students back, because all of their college students left here and went to Seattle. I wish we had been able to say before they left, you can either stay here, or if you go home, you have to stay at home. But yeah, I think it'd be less. I think it'd be more helpful from a safety standpoint. I think it'd be hard to pull off.
One more question here. I'm sorry, we continue to get them, but what a great discussion.
Can I throw one more thing in about the?
Please do.
About short-term rentals. So, and this is not an unknown piece of data, but we, in our health order says that short-term vacation rentals are not allowed in Kittitas County. So that's part of the discussion. So we're trying to determine whether people in Upper Kittitas County balancing risk and benefit want short-term rentals or they don't want short-term rentals. So so that's part of that. So please weigh that. Please discuss that with Laura.
We had somebody ask, how is opening for camping consistent with the stay home order? And from our survey, we did have about 70% of tourists that regularly travel to Kittitas County indicate that they will be traveling here this summer for outdoor recreation. So can you speak on that a little bit before we let you go?
Yeah, it's not consistent. That was a big part of my heartburn last week, and a big discussion here at the Emergency Operations Center. So before we moved into phase 2, camping was not legal, but people were still camping, and I had no one who was willing to say that we could regulate that and that there was any way of policing camping in Kittitas County. So we already had a situation where people were camping, and then and we had the weekend coming up. We knew that a lot more people were going to be camping. I bet last week I had 30 complaints at the end of the week about people camping, and I had to say, yeah, they're not supposed to be camping, but I don't have any way of enforcing that. But we did talk about putting in our health order a no camping in Kittitas County piece of the health order. So that would be a legally binding document. But we realized that there was no way to enforce that. So like the vacation rental piece, people are not supposed to be traveling here to camp, but people are traveling here to camp, and we have no way to enforce that. So that was not put in as a health order, and we're just trying to figure it out on the back end. It increases our risk of disease, especially for places like Safeway and the gas stations in Upper County, where a lot of those people will stop and get their supplies. The people that are coming in camping in Upper County and are infecting each other are most likely taking most of that disease back to their counties of origin, which would be on the west side. So yeah, there's a lot of this that's not very consistent, and I wish it was. I wish a small shoe store could open, since Fred Meyer can can sell shoes, but I only have some control over all this.
Well, we look forward to seeing that growth and more consistency, hopefully here soon. And thank you for jumping on the call today, Dr. Larson. I don't know if you have any last words you kind of want to speak on, but what a great discussion today.
Yeah, it was great. And I'm always happy to be available to people. I would encourage all of you to wear a mask when you can't be further than 6 feet from others, because I really believe that the science shows that decreases spread of disease to others, so it protects all of our frontline workers. And by doing that more consistently, we're going to move into phase 3, and then we're going to move into phase 4. And I think a big part of the reason that we got into phase 2 is because people in Kittitas County were really looking out for each other, and I think that's how we're going to get into phase 3 too. So that would be my ask, and please give Laura your input in regards to the vacation rentals. We all would appreciate that, and call me anytime. Take care. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, so we usually spend about an hour in this discussion. We are almost right at that hour. Is there anybody else that just wants to put any contents into the chat function real quick that we can answer to? If not, we may just end this right on the hour. So if you do have additional questions that maybe come after this call, feel free to get a hold of Madison. That's madison@kittitascountychamber.com, or you're free to call me. I'm usually in the office Monday through Friday from about 9 to 1 o'clock each day. So I am mostly at home in the afternoons, but I will respond via email. We will share the recording on our website, so you will have this recording. Thank you very much for attending. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you all.